please, would you help me with this?
Hello?
Oh.
Are you all right?
Oh, no.
Couldn't you get the door open?
No.
I see.
Well, could you give us some change,
Yes,
please?
of course.
Oh,
There, now let's have a look.
there.
There we are. There we are.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Thank you. Oh.
Using the telephone in a public call box can be a pretty hazardous operation. That's the sort of scene we're all familiar with, particularly difficult for the elderly and the disabled. And it's the sort of thing British Telecom have been aware of and worried about for a long time. The problem has been what should happen to those familiar red boxes. Well, British Telecom has tackled the problem and has come up with a solution. In fact, they've come up with several solutions, a whole range of new payphones which will soon be appearing in high streets and shopping centres and villages up and down the country. Now, in a moment, I'll be talking to Nick Kane, Marketing Director of British Telecom's Local Communications Services. But let's have a brief look at the sort of problems British Telecom have been faced with. The public payphone service has been losing money every year, as much as £50 million in the last financial year, 83-84. And the more they lost, the less there was to invest, and the worse the service became. It was even like a classic vicious circle. Now, much of the trouble lay in the design of the red phone boxes themselves. The first payphones went into service exactly 100 years ago in 1884. In those days, there was no standard design. Local councils did their own thing, sometimes with some very interesting results. Then in 1924, a national competition between architects for a new standard design produced a clear winner, this familiar red phone box. The winning architect was Sir Giles Gilbert Scott, who also designed Liverpool's Anglican Cathedral, Waterloo Bridge, and Battersea Power Station. He was very much an architect of his time, but he was an architect, not an industrial designer. Now, that basic design went through a number of variations over the years. This version, for example, a sort of miniature post office, failed miserably. People on the phone could hardly hear the voice at the other end because the stamp machine made such a racket, and in damp weather, the rolls of stamps stuck solid. So the ideas were good, it looked fine, it just didn't work very well. Then in 1936, Gilbert Scott produced his Jubilee model, which became the standard phone box on British streets. It was celebrated at the time, and is still pretty popular today, but as times have changed, so it's proved vulnerable to vandals and difficult for the elderly and the disabled to use. And that's true even of the latest version, introduced in 1968. And that really is the crux of the commercial problem. When phone booths are unpleasant to go into, and when the equipment, more often than not, doesn't work, then of course people stop using them. So revenue drops off, and that, as we said, cuts funds for investment and maintenance. So what could British Telecom do about it? They decided on a major investment program to come up with a totally new design. Now, the brief for the design and technical departments was to assemble a range of booths and equipment which would meet the needs of all payphone customers. The main aim being to give the public a payphone service that would use, again, useful, reliable, clean, modern and profitable facility for everyone. Well, Nick, before we look at the solutions you've come up with, Nick, let's look at the old boxes. Now, clearly, since they're upwards of 40 years old, a thing is wrong with them. What would you say are the main faults?
Well, let's start with the door, shall we? It's extremely heavy, difficult to open, particularly for old people. The entrance is extremely narrow, and there is a ledge at the bottom, which means if you're in a wheelchair, you find it almost impossible to make a call from a public telephone.
What about this ever-present problem of vandalism?
Yes, that is a major problem for us, and it's partly due to the poor lighting inside the box, because it's very easy for the vandal to get up to his mischief inside without anybody knowing. It also makes, of course, very difficult to make a telephone call as well. The fact that it is totally enclosed also means that any rubbish and dirt that collects in the box obviously is very difficult to clean out.
Do you have a big cleaning bill?
Yes, we have a very substantial cleaning bill. We do our best to look after them, but frankly it's an uphill struggle with this design of telephone box.
Okay, let's move on to the new ones. Now, obviously, they're very much more modern looking, as indeed they ought to be, and clearly with this one you've solved the access problem because it's got no door.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, it's very much easier now to step straight up to the phone and make a telephone call. Particularly, of course, if you're a disabled person in a wheelchair, the equipment in the box is at eyesight level, and it's very easy to get your wheelchair very close to the handset.
What about the problem of vandalism?
Yes, well, we've made these out of the strongest materials we could find. They're stainless steel and toughened glass, and we hope this will severely restrict the vandalism.
And the lighting?
Yes, the lighting we've increased sometimes four times more than in the old phone boxes, which we hope will deter the vandals as well. Plus, of course, it'll make the making of a telephone call much easier.
Have you learned very much from other countries, America, for example?
Yes, well, this basic design is an American design, so the design is tried and tested throughout the United States over the last 10 to 15 years.
And what about these surfaces? Are they soundproof?
Yes, they're special acoustic surfaces, which will mean that when you're inside the booth, it is really remarkably quiet, so you can make your telephone call in comfort.
Okay, take me on to this one, because this obviously is enclosed, rather like the older ones. Same materials?
Yes, made of the same toughened glass, stainless steel, etc. This is just another one of the whole range of phone booths that we are launching. It is an enclosed version. It has gaps at the bottom, which mean it will be self-cleaning. The wind will blow out any rubbish that goes in there. And it has the same acoustic material inside and obviously be very good for exposed sites.
Would this go into places where, for example, it was very noisy, like railway stations?
Yes, it will go into the noisier sites that we have. Railway stations, I suspect, will be a mixture of this sort plus the booth, because we can get more of the other booth in.
Give me some idea, Nick, of the expected life of this sort of booth.
Well, the expected life, we think, will be somewhere between 15 and 20 years.
So we're really looking at the telephone booth of the 21st century?
Yes, we are indeed. It'll just take us into the next century.
Nick, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, both these booths meet the same design brief, but they're designed to be used in different circumstances. In fact, as we've said, British Telecom have developed a range of new booths to provide good payphone facilities in most environments. This basic design, for example, is very versatile. It can stand singly or in back-to-back pairs. These different versions are ideal for sites where space is at a premium or where groups of payphones are needed. And this triangular shape is designed to slide into a corner or into a confined space. And the variety of designs is important. It means, of course, that lots of sites that may have been neglected in the past could now get a payphone, as Nick Kane explains.
A small suburban shopping centre will lend itself well to one of the new open-fronted designs. This triangular model gives excellent sound insulation and protection from the weather, but we don't have to find a site where an opening door could make the pavement too narrow. Where there's too much noise, a site beside a main road, for example, will install the new enclosed booth. It's brighter and more spacious, altogether a much more pleasant environment than the old red box. We'll also use this design on exposed or remote sites where we have to combat the weather, or where the phone, although a vital link, may remain unused for several hours. But in town centres, shopping precincts, railway stations, wherever phones are in constant demand but space is at a premium, we believe that this design will offer the public the service they want. If you're carrying shopping, luggage, or just in a hurry, it'll be much simpler to make a quick call. Shoppers certainly took to it when we tried one out in Guildford High Street.
The old style of phone box was very claustrophobic and got dirty inside. No, I think it'd probably be all right.
It looks very nice, yeah. I'd like to make a call from that, yeah.
Do you like the old ones, or...?
Well, they're all right, but, I mean, if everybody's going to make a mess of them and break the glass all in them, I mean, you might just as well have opened one and done with it.
Part of the reason British Telecom are bringing these in is so that people in wheelchairs can use the phone.
Oh, yes.
Do you think it's a good idea?
Yeah, very good.
I do like it, actually. My initial reaction was how horrible, but it's more sensible, less susceptible to vandals, I would think.
I mean, can you hear the traffic? I mean, you've got noise there. If I stepped inside... Hello? Hello? I would think it's very, very good. British Telecom? Very nice indeed. Thank you very much.
And even Granny Smith shouldn't have any problems.
Oh, that's better. Just what I...
This new payphone package from British Telecom doesn't just include the phone booths and the phones themselves. There are a number of other facilities included, all designed to upgrade the public telephone system. In today's cashless society, they're also introducing systems which don't require coins. The first of these is the phone card. It's not a credit card, but a way of purchasing call units in advance. Each card entitles you to a specific amount of call units and saves you carrying pockets of loose change. You can buy these at a retail outlet near the phone card booth. It's already proved to be a very popular system. The only complaint is there aren't enough of them. So by the end of 1985, their number will be increased to about 8,000. Then there's a completely new high-technology service, Credit Call. Businessmen are heavy credit card users, and they make a lot of calls. So it's an obvious development to be able to charge calls direct to the customer's credit card. The first of the credit call facilities is now on trial at Heathrow. And thirdly, there's a new service called Account Call, which British Telecom will be experimenting with in the new year. For this, all you need is a personal identification number. You key your number into the payphone, and the call is automatically charged to your telephone account. In addition, many more people will soon be able to keep in touch while on the move. They already have train phones, and that service will be expanded. And there are all the other places where people want to make calls when they're away from the home or the office. Pubs, clubs, petrol stations, hairdressers and so on. For these other public places, British Telecom will be marketing a range of rented payphones that are lighter and more compact, more suitable for a wide variety of locations. Nick, does this new development mean the end of the old red telephone box?
Mostly it does, yes. We intend to change out virtually all of the red phone boxes as you know them today. There will, of course, be cases where we would wish to retain them for conservation reasons, for local heritage reasons, and so on. But those will be few and far between.
So where they look nice, you're going to leave them?
That's correct, yes.
What kind of research did you do, Nick, to arrive at this particular design?
We looked all over the world. We went to virtually every country and had a look at what payphone booths they had. And from that search, we chose the American design that you see behind me.
Because that had the most suitable materials and so on?
Yes, it was the most suitable materials. It had passed all the very rigorous safety tests in the United States. And we felt it was quite the most suitable for us.
Have they actually been road tested in this country?
No, they haven't yet. We have done a fair amount of testing on the equipment, but the boxes themselves are new.
And how long before we're likely to see them on our high streets?
Well, the program starts as of January, but it'll be about the middle of the year before you start seeing them in any significant numbers.
But presumably the overall program will be a very long-term one?
Yes, it's something like a 10-year program at the moment, because obviously it does take a fair bit of time to change out the equipment and the box.
And roughly how much, Nick, will the program cost?
The total cost is around £35 million over the 10-year period.
So you're going to start spending out about 3.5 million a year from now?
That is correct, yes.
Obviously, changing the box is very important. Changing the equipment as well, I think, is very important. Tell me something about the new telephone.
Yes, well, the new telephone is much smaller than the existing one, and it will accept virtually any coin up to the pound coin. So it will be very much easier to make long-distance calls rather than having to shovel in lots of 10p's.
Can you get any change out of the phone?
Yes, you can. All unused coins will be returned.
What kinds of things are still in the pipeline to make using the payphone system easier for the public?
Well, there are a number of things in the pipeline. Let me just mention one. For example, the phone card, which is something you will have already seen. We have already installed phone card machines in some of our busier sites around the country. We're increasing that number up to a level of 8,000. We believe it's a much nicer, much easier way of making a telephone call. In addition to that, we're looking at new technological approaches to payphones. I'll just mention two. One is where we are going to offer the facility of charging your call to your credit card. So you can take your Access, your Visa or American Express card and just wipe it down the side of the payphone, and that charge will be automatically billed to the appropriate account. The other one, which we're trialling that thing about the beginning of next year. In addition to that, we are going to trial what we call account call, which is where the customer just dials in his own telephone number plus his own personal identification number, and then that call will be charged directly to his own account.
And finally, Nick, would you say the payphone system has turned the corner, as it were? You're now on the up and up instead of being on the down and down?
Well, we have a very simple ambition in British Telecom, and that is to make the public payphone service in the United Kingdom the best in the world. We believe this is just the start of that. We've got a long way to go, and we recognise we've got a long way to go. We are absolutely committed and determined to make it happen.
Nick, thank you very much indeed. So there we have it, a range of new solutions to an old problem. These new public phone booths will be safer and more efficient. They'll be easier to get in and out of, and there should be more of them about. So altogether, a very considerable improvement in the payphone service. And indeed, this big new investment programme has that as its central aim, namely to ensure that wherever you go in our towns and cities and villages, you'll be close to a payphone, that the phone booth will be in a pleasant condition, that it will work and give you access to a fast and efficient service. Indeed, as Nick said, we're looking at the payphone service we'll be using in the 21st century.